Hey everyone, happy Friday. I'm Eric Johnson, host of the show that you are watching, Logtech Live. I'm joining you from my brand new home office slash studio, Logtech headquarters um, in Alexandria, Virginia. I am really excited about our show today, and I'm also kind of freaked out that we are literally a month away from TPM. Somehow TPM is starting a month from tomorrow. That really snuck up on me. But super excited, as you might imagine. I just counted right before the show went on. I'm doing 14 sessions this year at TPM, which is, I think, less than I did last year. But obviously, the bulk of technology-focused sessions, I'll be leading. Anything you see on the program that's technology-related, I probably had somewhat of a hand in dreaming up or recruiting people for. So really excited. You can still use if you haven't registered yet and you want to come and join us in Long Beach, all your good friends in the global container shipping supply chain space, you can still use this code EJTPM25. And the registration code, I believe, is in the LinkedIn comments. So do that right now. Time's running out. What more do you need to know about this event? We have like 100 plus speakers, a ton of sessions. I was just posted earlier this week about how we try to make it hard for people to decide what to do when we have breakout sessions. If someone comes back to me and says, I didn't know which session to go to, they were all so good, then we've done our job right. So really, really, really important time of year, especially for this event with all of what's going on that we've talked about in the Red Sea and more, Panama Canal. It's all happening right now. So please join us there. I also wanted to mention, in less than 3 months, I will be in New Orleans at the Journal of Commerce's Break Bulk and Project Cargo conference, leading a session on technology for the project cargo and break bulk space. I've just been putting that together this week. It's going to be really cool. There's a link to register as well in the comments. So definitely join me in New Orleans as well as Long Beach. Just follow me wherever I go. All right. That's the easiest thing. One last thing, next Monday, in fact, in like 48 hours, I will be on a plane headed to my favorite place in the whole world, Las Vegas. It's not really my favorite place in the whole world, but it will be fun because Manifest is there next week. I am participating in a bunch of different panels, all of them on Monday, including one with the company that whose CEO is going to be joining us in just a second. So lots of interesting stuff there. I'm going to be talking about data, including the JOC's Gateway, which is our dashboard of different data sources for the container shipping and trucking and intermodal spaces. And I'm going to be talking about what's going on in the ports and maritime space in terms of adoption of technology. And then I'm going to be talking about visibility as a means to increase resiliency. So I'll be very busy on Monday on stage, but catch me between sessions at one of the cocktail hours or Tuesday. I'm on site all day Tuesday, so happy to catch up with anyone who's there. One last thing, blended pledge. I say this every show. Please, someone support this. Everybody support this, but someone really support it with a lot of money. Help get people who are underrepresented on stage, make the industry on stage look like it does in the rest of the industry. This initiative with that Let's Talk Supply Chain, Sarah's championing this for a long time, helps people who don't have the budget to travel, get invited to speak, aren't able to do it because they don't have the buy-in or the travel budget to do so. So let's not let that happen. Let's not let that be a barrier to proper representation on stage. Okay, news of the week. I got 4 stories this week, so I'm going to run through these probably a little quicker. Last week, a very high-profile story in the Logtech world. Chris Kirkner, CEO of a company called Slink that is now declared for bankruptcy, was convicted by a jury in a federal court in Texas for basically misusing company funds that were invested into the company. He diverted those. The jury found that he diverted those into his personal accounts and used them for his personal use. So obviously somewhat of a conclusion to this long-running saga that started almost 2 years ago when we started hearing that employees of the company were not getting paid, and that sort of started some red flags that ended in Kirkner getting suspended, I think, first, and then ousted in August of 22. And then that spiraled into a federal case from the Department of Justice and SEC. So, this seems like one of those things that's tailor-made for a podcast or a Netflix special or something. I don't know. Maybe this company never got to the size of some of the other ones that have been high-profile kind of collapses. But in any case, this will probably be appealed. Sentencing, I believe, is in July. He's potentially facing a long time in prison if the verdict is upheld. So that's probably the newsiest part of the last 2 weeks. I wrote a story, second story I'll highlight. I wrote a story last week about rate management, and specifically rate management geared toward shippers. I've been reporting for 15 years on rate management tools, and almost completely they have been targeted at NVOs, freight forwarders, companies that aggregate a lot of different shipper demand and have to balance a lot of rates across a bunch of different carriers. It makes sense. The market has been focused mostly on them. We're starting to see some early stage companies, including one that I had on my show a few weeks ago, Graham Parker of Ship Angel, who's quoted in this story, use targeting shippers with rate management tools. So in this story, I just sort of talked about whether there could be a connection in reducing invoice error rates if we connect, digitized rates and not spreadsheet-based rates into a process that goes straight through into an invoice. Okay, moving along. My colleague Bill Cassidy wrote a story earlier this week, sort of a report back from the SMC3 Jumpstart conference that he was at in Atlanta last week, talking about the way AI is impacting the world of trucking. And I think the interesting piece, and we've talked a lot about this here, is AI is not a robot sitting next to you. AI is not taking over every job, but it is having a very interesting kind of quiet impact on a bunch of what might be perceived to be low value add processes. So Bill in this story focused on things like invoicing and dock scheduling as areas that AI is really having an increasing impact on. So I think that's interesting. I think AI is an amplification of the industry rather than sort of like a replacement of people is a good way to think about it. And this story kind of delves into real world applications of it in the trucking world. One last story I wanted to highlight. This isn't necessarily a pure tech story, although certainly the role that technology plays in automating or facilitating trade through U.S. ports is an ever-present topic. My colleague Bill Mongaluzzo did a story just this week, actually sort of more of like a commentary on LA and Long Beach using the sort of demand rationalization of the last year to prep better for the next demand surge that they might face. Definitely worth your time to kind of look through this and see directly from some of the companies and people that are responsible for sort of that planning stage at ports over the next few years, to talk about what they're doing so that LA and Long Beach in particular, obviously the biggest gateway together, by far the biggest gateway in North America, the Western Hemisphere for that matter. So it's really important that this gateway can handle the influx of cargo, especially now as we're seeing first half of 24, we're seeing Panama Canal restrictions due to climate concerns there, not enough water, and obviously what's going on in the Red Sea, kind of potentially shifting some volume away from Asia to U.S. East Coast transits. So everything's in play right now, and I think LA and Long Beach are probably going to have to, gird themselves for an influx of demand maybe faster than they had imagined, with all of those things kind of factoring in their favor. So definitely worth a read. Anything Bill writes is worth a read. He's been doing this longer than I've been alive, I think. So he could do this in his sleep at this point. All right. Well, it's time to bring my guest on. I've referred a couple times to him, or his company, I should say. Joining today is Kyle Henderson, who's a CEO of a company called VIZION. As I mentioned, he and I think Kyle's already in Vegas. I will be there soon. And I'm actually joining a panel that Vision has facilitated around, it's actually a set of sessions around visibility and its various uses. Kyle, awesome to have you here. We've known each other for a few years, and I'm glad we finally got to have you on the show.
Always my pleasure, Eric. Nice to see you again as well.
Cool. So I always like to start out with a background. Well, actually, first of all, thanks everyone for jumping in and saying hi. Carolina, Jessica, thanks for joining us today. Natalia, Grant, good to see you, Grant. I'll see you also in Manifest. Give us a background on yourself before you get into what Vision is.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm a tech product nerd at heart. I've helped build a number of products and companies focused around analytics and mapping solutions over the past 20 odd years of my career. You know, some of those are as complex as, if you know of graphical information systems, GIS, trying to bring GIS onto the interwebs back in the 2000s, to working at companies that were focused around collecting all the information around kind of points of interest worldwide and making sense of them. Spent a lot of time at Navtech as well, which is now here.com in the past, and found myself coming to the freight industry back in 2015, so about 9 years ago now. And those loves of all things mapping and all things analytics have really played out to be impactful in this space. And I'm sure you love to see maps with lots of dots on them as well, telling you about where freight is and where ships are, et cetera. But taking that information and really finding richer analysis than just the location of things is very, very interesting. I mean, I've always been a map geek at heart as well. I was that kid with the National Geographic subscription that would desperately hope that there was a new map coming in the next edition being released, and it wasn't every single one, but those maps would be all over my room with drawings and thoughts and even sometimes critiques.
So in the 1700s, you would have been a cartographer and not a technologist, I guess.
Especially because my eyesight is horrendous. I wouldn't have been able to do anything unless it was very fine, detailed work close to my face.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I have to take my glasses off to see anything up close. So I would have been, I maybe would have been in high demand as a cartographer back then. I've also been fascinated in geography. I think one of the things that drew me to the logistics world was it gave me a free ticket basically to like explore the world that I was always fascinated with growing up. So that's interesting to hear that kind of map inclination is translated into your day job now. So give people, I mean, I would assume some people are familiar. You've been in the market now for a while. You've been at a lot of different events that people may have experienced or encountered you at. What is Vision? How and why did it get started? Who are your customers? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So Vision at its heart is all about visibility for the containerized freight world. And that could be the logistics side, that could be the supply chain side, that could be understanding the global trade as it's driven by this heartbeat of containers moving around the world. Now, the company got started for very simple reasons. Being a SaaS software, map, analytics, product nerd, came to this space and was helping other companies try and build, at the time, called supply chain control towers or logistic control towers. How do I get a single pane of glass that shows me how everything is flowing and risks, et cetera? Well, in the process of building those types of things, came to the simple realization that the data you need to make those things work to deliver on their product promises was either unavailable, horrendously dirty, very challenging to work with. And in short, most solutions we saw in the market didn't really ever fully deliver on what they promised. And myself and my co-founder, Tyler, we, loving to build things, said, hey, if we want the kind of the next generation of software to exist in the space, there are data problems that have to be solved. And if we focus on those, there's a lot of innovation we can help power. And then we think there'll be a lot of opportunity that comes from that. So the early days of Vision was just focused on the simple idea of how can we easily provide the best container shipment tracking information available, and pair it with the best support and partnership-minded organization that you could work with, and just help people build better stuff. And we've grown from there. It's been quite exciting since writing first line of code. I think December 2019 was the first line of code we put together for
Interesting
VIZION.
timing on that.
Well, you can't pick timing sometimes. It's better to be lucky than good.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you're both.
Right.
But in that regard, uh, it was interesting going through this journey, because what started off as helping people deal with this painful part of just tracking container, whether you want it as data or to answer a question like, when's my container, where is it, when's it going to arrive, etc. And we saw and had a longer term thought around this, that you could see the container as like an atomic unit of global trade. And if you get really, really good at understanding how the containers move, and good at understanding, who cares about that container, what products are they moving, etc., it's an avenue to understanding bigger, meatier, more impactful topics, such as supply chain design, resilience, global trade patterns, etc. And we've been slowly marching and evolving and growing the company to this point where we are today. And we're going to be announcing a manifest, our new offering called TradeView, which very much focuses on monitoring all of global trade and putting it in the lens of both ESG as well as performance, and kind of creating a live atlas of global trade with rate tracking being at its heart.
So your team was kind enough to give me kind of a sneak preview of that. I definitely have a couple more questions about TradeView, because it really kind of it sort of correlates a bunch of things that I've been following for far too long now in my career of reporting on technology in our space. And so I think it's an interesting approach that I wanted to help have you explain a little bit more. But before that, I do want to address, so I've been unfortunate enough to be covering the visibility space for, I'll say fortunate, visibility space for, I want to say 18 years now. I think the first time I talked to a company about it was a discussion with what was then GT Nexus at their office in Oakland, California, when they were independent, when they were in your shoes. They were the upstart trying to convince people that things like cloud and multi-tenant and could work, and that you needed like visibility of all your containers as they were en route. How do you, like, we don't have time to go through chapter and verse of where it's gone from that conversation that I had to where we are now, but how do you see where Vision fits into this market where they still exist, and there's about, I would say, 5 to 8 other vendors that are focused super tightly around, international transportation visibility?
Yeah, I kind of see it as there's kind of 2 buckets of companies in these spaces, and the buckets are good at doing different things. If you look at something like a GT Nexus, say this bucket that is dominated by an app and platform solution. It's really designed, hey, we have customers of a certain type. They might be the carrier, or they might be the owner of the cargo, whether it's like the retailer receiving it or the manufacturer. They might be the logistics company.
Yeah.
That really care about, I need something to log into to do something with my workflow. What we find is that ends up being really valuable and really kind of verticalized, right? They'll get dozens, maybe a few hundred customers if they really focus on that for a long period of time. And it's a good business for them. They can get quite a bit of growth in terms of the revenues for the company, et cetera. Then there's another bucket which are focused around the data and the infrastructure to be able to support solutions like the first bucket. And this is where Vision sits, and this is where a few other companies we see in the space, something like a C Routes, for example, who we were just talking with Pierre the other day. they're focused more on how do I provide the data that is universally applicable, these atomic unit type data sets that are in demand from almost all of the interfaces across logistics, supply chain, global trade, to understand something or answer questions or a required ingredient to support specialized workflows. And so they end up being kind of two very different companies. Now, if you go to like the fintech space, you can make a comparison between like a company like, say, Brex, which is like banking, in short, cash management, or like a Plaid, which is more the data behind the scenes, but just helps connect people's accounts to the fintech services they want. And so they're very different in that regard. That's how I see this space as it's been developing during my career, and also what I was able to learn. Been a long time friends with John Urban, who was over at GT Nexus, and he's been a very good advisor throughout the years, and getting to hear the story and things they learned over time.
Yep.
And that directly fed into why we chose to zag over to this bucket versus zig to this application solution bucket for visibility.
It's very hard to displace entrenched applications in logistics. I think
Yep.
if there's been a lesson, yeah.
But I 100% agree. It's super hard to displace. What we did find was relatively universal was the customers were usually not 100% satisfied with the tracking data in any of the platforms.
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000. I would say they were not even universally satisfied with a bunch of different things, and that's partly. I remember I did a few months ago, or when I used to do my newsletter, my weekly newsletter, I did a thing that every software company has the ambition that they want to be tolerated, right? That means you're so big that everybody is using you, and everyone is kind of like, oh, I got to use Teams. And Microsoft is like, well, do we want 100% happiness, or do we want like several hundred billions of dollars of revenue because everyone's using it, right? So ideally it's both, but no, you hit upon a very good point, which is the execution systems that companies have been using. Some of them have good data in certain areas. Some of them have very good data in certain areas. It's hard to say that any of them have excellent data from A to Z for all of the things that need to make those systems run at their absolute best, right? So if I'm hearing what you're saying, you're in that analogy, you're in the Plaid role, and you are trying to essentially help your customers get more out of their systems by increasing the accuracy of the data that fuels those systems.
And I'd say our customers and our partners, because standing at the spot of focusing on all things data and focusing on all things being great partner and support organization helps make those applications, which don't have great data end to end, but have the workflows that promise that. It helps make those applications better, but then helps make kind of any application better. It's not just the GT Nexus. It's something that's spun up in house using Excel online at a small or medium sized shipper of some sort, right?
Yep.
Everyone benefits from better baseline data.
So that definitely mirrors what I have heard a lot over the last, I would say, year and a half, especially shippers, once they sort of stopped having 25-hour days every day and they could take a little breather, it really became a sense of we need to get a lot better data. Some of our data was lagging way behind the things we had invested in over the pandemic. That actually leads into a question I wanted to ask, which is I'm sort of getting to the end of my ability to ask this question, like what changed during the pandemic? Like I think we're now getting to the point where we have to stop asking that and start moving on a little bit. But I do think, especially since it sort of aligns with the birth and growth of your company, that pandemic period, right? What from a visibility, from a demand perspective, has been lasting from that started during the pandemic, and what are you seeing kind of receding back to sort of what I might call normal behavior or pre-pandemic behavior?
think what has been lasting is the universal need for tracking information uh, as a data feed of some sort.
Yep.
Now, I say that because, still the number one solution globally for getting tracking information is manual labor. That nothing outscales that to date. And that's why there's so many companies and so many great people working in this space to try and drive innovation. But what has persisted, and what kind of the pandemic and the supply chain crunch kicked off was the demand for a solution. And solution is one part kind of application and one part data set. And you need the two together.
Yep.
And the need was so great during the height of the pandemic that sales of solutions were going crazy, just flying off the shelf. People were buying left and right. And as you mentioned, most of them have okay data. A lot of them have not quite so okay data. But like, there's this realization over time that, hey, the tool actually does improve our workflow and improves the efficiency of our business and helps us do what we need to do better, and also helps us do new things we weren't doing before. But the data doesn't always 100% support it. And so we're always rolling up our sleeves and like getting underneath the hood of the car to try and fix the data in some way manually with these solutions. And why can't the data just be better? So that's what I would describe as like what was happening in the height of the pandemic. And as it starts to wane, there's this realization around data quality. I'd also say as like that started to wane, it reaffirmed how universally needed good data is, because in the past year or so, you could say, quite like the freight recession, right? Like freight rates are down, freight volumes weren't growing, et cetera. And a lot of our customers, that hurt their businesses. If you talk about a freight forwarder, that was tough for them. Carriers, tough for them. 3PLs, tough for them. We saw almost no cancellation of services during that. There might be companies who say, I want to kind of correct and right size based upon what I plan on tracking in the next year. But the need for quality, dependable data was so universal that people couldn't say no to it anymore and go back to how they once used to do it. So that was kind of an interesting learning and takeaway. And from us, very exciting, because I think there's a lot of resiliency in this promise of, and focusing so much of our capital and our efforts and investment into making sure quality data is available to all.
So are you, because I mean, we've talked, and I've talked with your team a lot about like the way your product is delivered, and it varies. There's not a singular way that everyone consumes what you do, right? So what can you break down, like who what percentage or who tends to use Vision purely as like a data feed to pump into something that they already have, versus no, actually I need an application to display this for me in a way that I don't have internally, or I don't have the resources internally to do?
So the majority of our customers are going to be the first bucket. They just are consuming a data feed. We helped, by being a good partner and collaborator, companies who needed a bit of UI get to that space by building a lot of integrations ourselves, and integrations to like easily available tools, as well as kind of more, say, specific platforms out there. We have a lot of companies who leverage our integrations we built for, so like Google Sheets, or Microsoft Excel Online, or Airtable, which we came out with, which provides an immense amount of flexibility to companies that are used to working in spreadsheets. Just does it online. And so puts the data in a format they're already used to. But then there's like integrations we built to major ERPs, TMSs, et cetera, so that people could get wired in faster. And then there's partnerships we've built with different supply chain management and TMSs as well, where not only have we built an integration, but the integration is also promoted and supported by the TMS themselves. So Vision data is available to buy when you buy the TMS from that provider as well. And that's how we've kind of started getting into this application space more as a support. We don't build our own track and trace type of thing. Like, we don't sell that type of solution, because from our take, there's hundreds of thousands of solutions out there that all have that feature as a promise, but all need the better data in them.
Right. Yep. I mean, we could do 30 minutes just on that specific topic. All of this stuff. It's all this show. The problem with this show is we're always scratching the surface on a million things, because I'm curious about a million things with every guest I have. There was an interesting question that came up from Michael Darden in the questions. Kyle, wondering how Vision works with, and that's with a Z, Michael. So you got to spell that right next time. How you work with the Open Visibility Network. So what is the Open Visibility Network, and what benefits does that kind of organization bring?
Yeah. So the Open Visibility Network, which have to give applause to Ty for being a key driver behind that at the beginning. At Tive, is a collaboration between companies to one, talk about kind of data standards in the space. So similar to, and of course, like DCSA from the ocean container space is also part of this conversation. But also talking about, how can there also be data integrations between platforms and such. Most of our collaboration has been talking around data standards. We very much are fans of what DCSA has done. We've given a lot of feedback and input into DCSA, but we also do some things that DCSA doesn't offer today, because we expand a bit more on certain topics in our standardization of the data. And so just one, being able to create a forum to talk about the challenge, the down the rabbit hole, deep, detailed issues around building data standards for understanding the movement of freight is a topic that the Open Visibility Network is always moving forward in some way. And just having that forum is a key bit, because otherwise we're all building in silos and
in parallel.
And our perspective is that solutions in the future for the companies that need logistics, supply chain, trade monitoring platforms and tech they won't be buying it all from one brand name. It will be a network of partners, providers, vendors that are all stitched together, who are specialists providing a higher quality end solution in the end. So I think that Open Visibility Network is a key player in that story.
I mean, kudos to Krenar. Anyone who can get Project 44 and 4Kites to participate in the same initiative deserves. Maybe they should send him over to the Middle East to solve some problems. So I wanted to since I mentioned it, I did want to address the Red Sea. We just did a webcast with you and C Roots and Lars Jensen a couple of days ago that dove really deep on that subject. I wanted to talk not about necessarily what's going on in the Red Sea and what people need to do about it, but more about how, during the pandemic, we saw this extreme fascination with dots on a map, whether it was ships waiting outside of LA and Long Beach to berth, whether it was, the amount of cargo that was sort of stranded in some place it was not supposed to be. That visibility as a visual resource became as prominent as I'd ever seen it in my career. And then last year, it sort of receded a little bit because things were flowing pretty smoothly. All of a sudden, again, we're starting to see those maps pop up. I've heard varying points on this, and you talked already about your love of maps and how you feel that's an integral part of this. I've had people say, you need that map. It's not just a eye candy. It is actually something that people can help understand a situation in real time in a quicker way than they would if they were looking at some sort of report. Alternatively, I've had people say it is purely something we have to build so that we can sell it. And then once they buy it, they never use it. What is the utility of a map when it comes to in-transit visibility, predictive visibility?
So I would challenge they never use it. Okay. It's a question of, do you use every tool in your toolbox every single day? Type of question.
Okay.
And the moment you need that more specialty tool, it becomes invaluable that you have it at hand versus needing to order it with, potentially quarters of delivery time as lead time on that
Right.
type of thing. So first, that's my
That,
perspective there.
very, very
And I think that's a very fair and honest kind of surface level comment to make. People demand it because they want something shiny. But I also would say I think many companies have not been creative enough or have kind of underserved by making their maps so one-dimensional in the sense where it's just a dot on the map and it might tell me the name of the boat type of thing. Like I can't use the maps to do geospatial analysis of some sort. And that's my background with GIS systems and bringing GIS to web and wanting to provide kind of standardized analyses that are driven by interactions of the map to create reports that you're interested in and want to share out type of thing. So one, I don't think we've seen the full potential of maps in our space yet with how they've been deployed. And two, we know there's high value because at the most critical moments, they're in massive demand. So it's a highly valued specialty tool. Now, from the kind of perspective of the Red Sea and so much of the work we've done through our own efforts, which are years of investment, are great partners as well to be able to bring many different disparate data sets together to start delivering maps that are highly interactive, meaning like I can be selecting geographies, selecting ports and vessels, filtering down to the companies that have goods on those vessels, filtering down to specific types of goods that are on those vessels, looking at freight that's in port that's planned to be shipped on a vessel soon, and understanding what are the implications and impact from just a basic trade level, but then connecting details such as what is the GHG or the carbon emissions for the route currently underway, or this booking as it is planned at the moment, or just any cargo on that vessel right now. Is it associated with a company that has sanctions on it or has alerts around child labor associated with the production of those goods? So we need to start thinking about maps more as kind of like what a live atlas can be for delivering richer insights and using maps to be able to drive down into more specialized workflows. Like, how do I use the map to get to the specific report that I need to deliver to my stakeholders type of thing for a decision-making process, or use the map in comparison mode to try and show a before and after to show the impact of a decision, or use the map to try and create a comparison to offer insight into this company's designed their logistics network and supplier network in this way in this industry around this product, and this company's done it very different. How do we see their performance playing out over time because of these different design decisions? So I love maps. I'm certainly a map nerd. I just think we've barely scratched the surface on how maps can drive us to stronger insights because people haven't delivered the features for it, which is no fault of them because usually the data wasn't there to power those features. And that's a lot of what we've been focusing on the past few years.
So this is actually very interesting. We've never talked about this before. So I'm actually super fascinated by what you just said because I was thinking that how my usage of like Google Maps has transformed the things that I use my phone for. If I need to find that operating hours of a business, now I tend to go to Google Maps because the information is piped directly into Google Maps on that. It's easier to find than on the website of the company itself through the through Google search engine, right? So what I'm hearing you say is a map is a conduit for all sorts of other information or processes that we never even thought were, okay, that's fascinating.
Everything in the world has a geographic element to it.
Yep. Real quickly, let's talk about TradeView. I think what we just talked about feeds in a bit. What exactly, you alluded to it before, but what exactly is this? How is it different from what you were delivering before?
So much of what we've delivered before is around tracking data, performance data sets for carrier performance, port performance data sets, trade route data sets. And part of the reason we've always focused on delivering that as data packaged as either APIs or the data set itself, say like in a Snowflake database or Snowflake instance, has been there's been a wealth of applications existing that all have the features that use that data, right? Like track and traces are everywhere in terms of our industry.
Yep.
What we were finding though is when you want to answer tough questions around how are events like the Suez Canal or the war in Gaza or the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea or the pandemic, and say like not black swan events so much, but maybe like gray swans, if that's even a term, where there are smaller regional or more localized events that are impacting companies but aren't making headlines type of thing. How do you start exploring that and learn and identify what questions can be asked and then start to surface answers around those questions for the purpose of supply chain resiliency, trade compliance, optimization of logistics, et cetera? We didn't see any user interface or applications out there that did those things really, really well, nor did we by any means see that there was kind of like a universal promise to have that feature across lots of different platforms. So where we had gotten was as a data set, we had stitched together lots of that data set, but we had found that there wasn't an application to show the data in to unlock all the value and power. So we made the jump to building out our first application platform, and it's titled TradeView. And you can kind of think of it as a Google Earth meets a Bloomberg terminal for monitoring global trade. And we have some great partners supporting us around this to be able to see live what freight is booked and planned to move over the next 30, 60, 90 days for about 60% of all global container movements, global shipments, as well as what is currently live and in transit. And then being able to see 10 years of history about what has arrived as well. And this data set then joined to other data sets, such as, great data sets around, say, like, the US government data.gov's data set around labor violations, or like Lloyd's List Intelligence around sanctions violations for vessels or vessel ownership. Start joining all these different data sets together, and you can start to answer questions about the overall health and risk profile of the global trade networks.
Yeah.
And that's what TradeView is promising to be, this live atlas of global trade, past, present, and near future.
So we're coming up on time. I definitely encourage if anyone wants to find out more about it. There will be lots of people on site at Manifest next week. You have a team coming to TPM also, where I'm sure you'll be able to highlight for them. So definitely encourage you to seek Kyle and his team out at both of those events. Last question before we wrap up. I ask this of every guest. This is the hardest one every show. Who's your favorite musician or band? And you have to tell me why.
So I might be a little bit outside of the age bracket for this one, but I think there was enough overlap for that influence me. Well, the short answer for me is Queen, honestly.
Okay, cool.
I'm not sure if anyone's given this answer before, but from the perspective of how much they changed and influenced music was phenomenal. I mean, aside from Freddie Mercury and his stage prowess and the vocals alone, you have like Brian May, who by himself is maybe the best, if not one of the best, electric guitar composers. He actually created new sounds for the electric guitar.
Yeah,
he actually built his own guitar.
Yeah, he has his own tone. You instantly recognizable tone. Yeah.
And he created that as well. They also were one of the first bands to produce music videos, as we know music videos.
Yep.
You got some great stats about like Brian May again. Like, he is an astrophysicist. He participated in the Pluto mission from NASA as an advisor. after his queen years to some extent, but not 100%.
It's not fair.
But
not fair.
and some great, so many chart-topping hits from them as well. I mean, I'm really a fan of Somebody to Love.
Yep.
But
you don't want to get me on karaoke with that one, unless you want to hear a middle-aged man's voice crack. Well, that's a great one. No one, as far as I can remember, no one suggested, or no one said Queen before, so we can add that to the playlist. Kyle, it has been awesome. It's always great talking to you. You're always really thoughtful about some of the challenges that exist in the industry, and you give people, I think, a good framework on how to think differently about those. So well, I'll see you very soon, and hopefully see a lot of people who are attending today. We'll see you both in Vegas next week. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. Cheers.
Bye. All right, really quick, already over time. That was too good a conversation. I didn't want to wrap it up. Dad joke of the week time. How do fish watch the latest movie? They stream it. My son gave me a whole list of jokes, so you're going to have to suffer through these over the next few shows until I can think of something better. What are you going to do? You stream it. It's a good joke. All right. I will be a Manifest in 48 hours. If you're there, look me up. TPM is a month away. Kyle will be there. I will be there. We have Robert Gates will be there. Ralph Haben Jensen at Hapag-Lloyd will be there. Mark Levinson, I have his book right here, The Box. He's speaking and he's signing copies of this book and his new book, Outside of the Box, I think it's called. So if you are in our industry, you need to be in Long Beach. I hope to see you there in sunny California in a month. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another fantastic episode. Thank you to the Let's Talk Supply Chain team for being the best in the business. I'll see you all soon. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.